local campaign, and thank you for joining us on Rogers TV for this debate in the riding of Ottawa West-Nepean. We are preparing for the federal election on September the 20th, and we're going to introduce to you in a moment 6 of the candidates who are running in Ottawa West-Nepean. So you'll have a chance to hear from them about the issues in this campaign. Let me first explain how our debate is going to work tonight. Each of the candidates will provide an opening statement of 1 minute in length. The order for those opening statements was drawn at random before we began recording. After that, we'll move into a series of debates on the important topics in Ottawa West-Nepean and across the country. In each case, I will open the debate by addressing a question to one of the candidates. Every candidate will get one question. That candidate will have 45 seconds to respond to the question on his or her own, and then we'll open it up to discussion and debate from all of the candidates for several minutes. At the end of that debate, we'll go back to the candidate to whom the question was originally addressed, and he or she will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll move through a number of different topics that way, and then we'll finish up with closing statements of 60 seconds in length, and we'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements. So let's meet the candidates who are here for our debate from Ottawa West-Nepean. First, the candidate representing the New Democratic Party of Canada, Yavar Hameed. From the Conservative Party, Jennekens. Sean Mulligan is the candidate from the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. David Stibbe is here from the Green Party of Canada. The Liberal Party candidate is Anita Vandenbelt, and from the People's Party of Canada, David Yeo. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here for the debate tonight. And let's start with Yavar Hameed. You have 1 minute for your opening statement. Go ahead.
Good evening. I would like to start by acknowledging that Ottawa West-Nepean is located on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin territory. People in this territory from Bayshore to Centrepoint and all across this riding are frustrated. They're frustrated by broken promises and are looking for a way to build better lives in the wake of income insecurity, skyrocketing rent, and unprecedented climate catastrophes that have only worsened in the last 6 years. As a lawyer who's built a practice in human rights in Ottawa for over 20 years, I've worked with communities across this city fighting for better lives. I'm motivated by the urgency demanded by this moment to build a systematic human rights response to converging crises. On September 20th, you have a choice. You can sit back and hope that broken promises will mend themselves, or you can stand up and you can take action with the NDP.
Thank you. Next up is the Conservative candidate, Jennekens. You have 1 minute as well.
Hello, my name is Jennekens, and I'm the Conservative candidate for Ottawa West-Nepean. Are you worried that your children and grandchildren's future will be worse off than yours? I know I am, and that's why I'm running. Are you worried about the direction our country is going under Justin Trudeau? I know I am, and that's why I'm running. I've been door knocking for weeks, and what I'm hearing is when people need their member of parliament, she's nowhere to be found. For the last 6 years, Ms. Vandenbelt has stood up for Justin Trudeau instead of standing up for Ottawa West-Nepean. I'm running to serve you better, and by working together, we can ensure that Canada's best days are still ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Sean Mulligan, representing the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. Go ahead.
Good evening. In 1986, Elections Canada granted federal party status to the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. For 35 consecutive years, the Christian Heritage Party continues to be Canada's only pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom federal party. Our Canadian values were founded upon our Christian values. We believe in the supremacy of God and the rule of law, as stated clearly in the preamble of our Canadian Constitution. The Christian Heritage Party is the voice of the unborn in Canada. Life is the first and most important human right. Without life, no other rights have meaning. We oppose abortion and euthanasia. Pierre Trudeau is the father of abortion in Canada, and his son Justin Trudeau is the father of euthanasia. These are the two bookends of the culture of death. What has happened to our great nation? Have we lost our spiritual will to govern with care and compassion? At CHP Canada, we will never stop marching for life. We will fight, and we will win.
All right, thank you. Next up is David Stibbe, who is the Green Party candidate. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Dave Stibbe. I ran in this riding in 2019 for the Green Party, and I'm running again because during the past 2 years of the Liberal government and the previous 4 years where they've run, nothing really has been effective in fighting our climate crisis. And I honestly believe the Green Party is the only party that is out there to do the right thing. The other piece of the puzzle is that I have raised 2 children in this riding. I have lived in this riding for 17 years, and I honestly believe that as a representative of Parliament, you need to represent your constituents. I'm a firm believer that as a Green Party, we are independent and able to raise the issues that are your concerns, not the issues of our party's leadership, and press those on you as being the overriding concerns. So I want to work for our riding. I want to see change that happens that you want to have happen. So please vote for the Green Party. Dare to be different this time.
Thank you. Next up is the Liberal Party candidate, Anita Vandenbelt. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Good evening. The last year and a half has been difficult for many Canadians, but our Liberal government has been there for you, whether for small businesses, for families, or making sure that you have the vaccines to get out of this so we can actually recover from this. The pandemic revealed a lot of inequities, but it also gives us an opportunity to build back more resilient, stronger, more fair and inclusive, whether that means $10 a day childcare, or supporting our seniors, or housing, Indigenous reconciliation, climate change, and making sure that everyone has jobs and opportunities. This is what I have been doing. I have a track record of working and listening to constituents and bringing your ideas, the ideas you bring to me every single Friday during my coffee hour, to Parliament, and then working across party lines to make it happen. I don't tear people down, I build bridges, and that's why I'm asking for your support so that I can continue doing just that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Finally, David Yeo, the People's Party of Canada candidate. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. My name is David Yeo, and I am your People's Party of Canada candidate for Ottawa West-Nepean. First and foremost, I'm an Indigenous person. Chief Robert Franklin of the Alderville First Nations is my great-grandfather, and he signed the treaties with the Colonials some 98 years ago. Second, I have over 30 years of experience in government. I have varying capacities, including national and international security, coalition and bilateral security with our U.S. partners to the south of us. I hold the Defense Department near and dear to my heart, along with all of the patriots that work there. Third, I'm an entrepreneur with over 20 years of Canadian business experience. To be clear, the People's Party of Canada is the only nationalist party on the ballot. We are the only party fighting for your rights and freedoms for all Canadians. We are the only party that advocates that every business is essential, and we are the only party fighting against lockdowns, mandatory vaccinations, and vaccine passports. I would like to thank Rogers at this time for stepping up and allowing us this live debate to happen, and also inviting the People's Party of Canada so our voice could be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. Let's get into some debates about the important topics in Ottawa West-Nepean and across the country. There's a lot at stake in this election, obviously, and we are going to talk about the impacts of the pandemic and issues like vaccination moving forward, but I want to start with a question to Yavar Hameed, the NDP candidate. You opened with a land acknowledgement, and I want to ask you what steps should be taken to achieve true reconciliation in Canada. You've got 45 seconds.
Thank you. So as part of the NDP plan, there is an integrated approach to reconciliation, which means in every policy aspect of what we do, we put Indigenous rights at the center. That means that, unlike the Liberals, we're not fighting First Nations children in court. We believe that centering the rights of Indigenous peoples, whether it's infrastructure programs that are done in community support across the board for Indigenous healthcare and income supports is vital. This is something that the Liberal government and the Conservative governments of the past have not been able to do, and it's a commitment that is central to what the NDP wants to achieve.
It's open to everyone now on this topic. Whoever wants to jump in, go ahead.
One of the things that I believe in terms of Indigenous reconciliation is we have to actually do real productive moves forward. We've been promising to improve healthcare and improve the water crisis in Indigenous nations for I don't know, my entire lifetime, I feel, and we've never actually followed through on those promises. And I can assure you those are our priorities that need to be addressed. We actually have to follow through on the promises that we make, and those are the ones that I feel that, red, blue, they never actually follow through on the promises. And the Greens and even the NDP, I think that, we have to consider the fact that the Green Party truly believes that we have to, incorporate Indigenous peoples in being part of the solution, right? They're the ones that know what they need, and they need to be empowered to actually make those changes themselves.
So Dave, I can agree with you on that as far as red, blue is concerned. I have a little bit of heritage in this area. So to comment on that, throwing billions of dollars at a problem is not a successful outcome. What you need to do is talk to the elders, be in the communities, and fundamentally find out what the issues really are. Once at that point, you find out, for instance, the water issue. We still have a crazy water issue, and there's really no reason for it. I've been in Afghanistan. I've taken teams of people over there, and we have created provincial reconstruction teams that have built schools, roads, and guess what? Fresh water for Afghans. Why can't we do that at home?
Let's just talk about the kinds of things that we have done. 109 long-term boil water advisories, 183 short-term, and that's out of some of them that have been there over 40 years. We built over 200 schools, 1,700 infrastructure projects, but that's just the concrete things we've done to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples. One of the things the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, 80% of them that are in government jurisdiction are either completed or well on their way. But let me talk a little bit about here in Ottawa West-Nepean. I heard my opponents talk about Indigenous children. We have Larga Baffin, and one of the things that I learned is that because there was no federal law for Indigenous children's welfare, women who were coming here to give birth at the Ottawa Hospital had their children apprehended under Ontario law and then kept here in Ottawa while they went back to Nunavut. I fought hard and worked to get C-92 passed, which is the first ever Indigenous Children's Protection and Welfare Act, which means that those children are going to stay in Indigenous communities. I got funding for the Indigenous Commons and Indigenous Entrepreneurship Program at Algonquin College and did the first Indigenous Reconciliation blanket ceremony that was ever done on Parliament Hill. We have so much more to do, but our government is there. We have provided, yes, billions of dollars, but we're making a real difference in the lives of Indigenous people in collaboration and cooperation with them.
The Conservatives are committed to reconciliation with our Indigenous community by creating a strategy that will include Indigenous individuals, that will advocate housing, fresh water. So many communities right now still don't have water, so it's important that we advocate and reconcile with our Indigenous ancestors.
It comes back to the old age question of accountability. I mean, there's an understanding of reconciliation, and no question, that is being worked on. It's being worked on from many forums outside of the government as well, like the Tragically Hip Foundation. No question about it. They're doing a lot of great things. But I have to come back to the accountability side of it. When it comes to the Indigenous people and kids specifically that we are finding all over the Canadian landscape, these are not unknown graves. We've known about them since it happened. I mean, it's not unknown to us. What we're looking for is not reconciliation in this area. We're looking for accountability.
So, David, I'm glad that as a fellow candidate, you have some Native blood, and you're among us this evening. And so I can put this question to you. One of the 45 planks we have on our platform for Christian Heritage Party has to do with Aboriginal affairs or Indigenous affairs. Now, we want to, as a party, we know that the Indian Act, going back to 1876, which is 145 years old, is outdated and should be abolished. We are not saying that simply as a party. We are saying that because we have listened to Native people and Native elders, including a local elder in the area, Claudette Commanda. So it's not just coming from her, it's coming from Native chiefs and elders across Canada that this has to be the Indian Act abolished and start over again. And as far as truth and reconciliation is concerned, we also have the process of healing. I think they're missing there. There should be called the Truth, Healing, and Reconciliation Commission. Do you agree with me that there is
You know,
healing
there's-
along the
there's-
way?
There's no question about it that the Indian Act needs to be replaced. And the People's Party of Canada will do exactly that.
My
Okay.
belief, though, is
Very quickly.
if the Indigenous population really does support the Liberals and all the work that they've done, why do they continuously say that Trudeau has betrayed them?
All right. I asked the question to Yavar Hameed. You've got the final 30 seconds on this. Go ahead.
I want to focus on some of Anita's comments. I think the Liberals' track record on Indigenous rights has been horrendous. There's been many promises, and those promises have been fundamentally broken when it comes to actually delivering on boiled water advisory. The 2016 target has been moved 11 years to 2026. Trudeau has spent $100 million fighting First Nations in court. And still, 1 in 5 First Nations children on reserves live in substandard, overcrowded housing. We need action, we need it now, and we haven't got from the Liberals.
All right, thank you. Let's move to the next question now, which I'll direct to Jennifer Jennekens, the Conservative candidate. There is more and more information all the time about the severity of the climate crisis. So why is your party aiming for lower emission reduction targets than the Liberals are?
Thank you, Mark. The Conservatives are standing up with Canadians against global polluters. China, India, and the United States are 3 countries that have the highest emissions, the highest carbon footprint. So Canada needs to have strong policies, including reducing our carbon footprint as well as meeting our target, our Paris target. Thank you.
Okay, it's open to everyone now.
So
climate
we
change?
are the party that has put a price on pollution and given the money back to Canadians. We are the party that is not only meeting the 30% Paris target, but we're already exceeding it to 36%. And we have now put in an even more ambitious target of 40 to 45%. The Conservatives would take you back to 30%. We know that for our children, when I go around the riding and I talk to young people, this is the #1 issue. We know that we have to be bold, we have to be ambitious, and one of the things that is really important is that in the riding, this isn't just about national, in the riding, we have restored through federal funding the wetlands in the green belts in the D&D campus. That's brought back 27 species, and it's allowed for mitigation because when we had those 2 1-in-100-year floods, we were able to gather a lot of that water within those wetlands. I fully support making sure that we maintain Mud Lake as a full conservation area, and I have been the one that was able to get a number of other things with the Oceans Protection Plan and a number of other things that we're doing to protect our freshwater, our rivers, our lakes. We have a plan that is actually working. We have targets that are bold and ambitious, and we actually are doing it right now.
So
We've
Anita,
exceeded the
I have
Paris
to jump in here
targets.
because the aspect on climate change is something of a misnomer, right? The aspect of climate change is this: we are only 2% of the problem. You have to admit that. We are only 2% of the problem. The People's Party of Canada recognizes that it's India, it's China, and it's the United States of America that are the problem. So why are we going out and spending billions of dollars internationally when we could be taking all of that money, bringing it back to Canada, concentrating on a nationalist platform of climate change, working with our companies, working with our people, working with our industries, in order to be able to really recreate that energy within our own national boundaries. The aspect of us being in the Paris Accord is costing us way too much money. We should be pulling that back. The People's Party of Canada would pull out of the Paris Accord, and we would reconstitute that money back into Canada where it needs to be put so we can put people to work and actually make a change in climate within our own borders.
So my thoughts on this is, we have what's not a climate problem anymore or climate change. We actually have a climate crisis. And every party looks at this as like, well, Canada's a small potatoes and we shouldn't do our thing in the global economy. But we are leaders, people look up to us, and we have to set a course for our own country that shows that climate change can be addressed and it can be attacked. The problem with most of the targets set by every other party is they're looking at deferring these targets. They're looking at 10-year plans. It is actually happening right now. If we think that we're going to solve this by making cuts that are targets that we're going to meet in 10 years' time. No, we have to meet these in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. And the Green Party is here to put that pressure on. The other belief I have is Canada has some of the most talented scientists out there, and the Green Party wants to invest in technology. We can't just reduce emissions. We actually have to come up with technology that captures carbon and puts it back into the earth, or puts it away so that it can actually reduce the carbon in the atmosphere, because reducing carbon is not the only solution. We have private companies like Shopify investing in carbon capture technology, and the government is not actually supporting those types of technology, putting
David,
minimal amounts of money into it. So we have to do both sides of the issue, and that's so important, and it's for now, not 10 years from now.
All right, Yavar Hameed, go ahead.
David, if I could, I think one of the questions is how do we do that? How do we meet those goals? One of the ways that we don't do that is with $2 billion in subsidies to fossil fuel companies, which the Trudeau government has been engaged with. We don't want to subsidize these fossil fuel companies. We want to set goals, and we want to meet those goals. In contrast to what Anita said, the track record of the Liberals has actually shown that since the Paris Agreement, our GHG emissions have actually gone up. We're actually regressing in terms of our track record. We actually need a plan. We need a plan that can integrate a green response into housing, into all elements of the policy structure, and that's what the NDP plan is about.
I can't disagree with you more.
Fossil fuel subsidies. What the NDP include as fossil fuel subsidies are things that are actually turning our energy into green energy, and the wage subsidy, and orphan wells, and things that are actually going to get us where we need to go. The climate and the economy go together, and we are the party that has put in legislation that actually has 5-year incremental targets to get to net zero in 2050. We're getting it done.
Unfortunately, that's time. Thank you, everyone. Jennifer Jennekens, I asked you the question. I'll go back to you. You've got 30 seconds to wrap up on this topic.
Thank you. The Conservatives have a strong plan to combat climate change and reduce our targets and reduce emissions by 2030, all the while by repealing Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to our next topic, and we'll turn to the pandemic, and I'll address this question to Sean Mulligan of the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. When will Canada begin to address the fiscal cost of the pandemic, and how would you do it?
Some look at this as an easy question, some look at this as a hard question. Now, during the time when I was collecting signatures for my nomination papers, I was talking to a homeowner, and she said that she was a Liberal supporter, okay, a Trudeau supporter. So I asked her why, and she said, well, he was able to spend our way out of the pandemic. Now, as you know, in the last couple of weeks, it's been hot and humid, not great weather for collecting signatures, and this is why a lot of people, including myself, were upset about this summer election. However, on retrospect, our Prime Minister, our hero, did not spend our way out of the pandemic. He overspent our way out of the pandemic.
It's open to everyone now on this.
Every dollar that we have spent during this pandemic is a dollar that Canadians didn't have to borrow on their credit cards or lose their homes or not be able to pay their rent. We have been there for Canadians so that Canadians could stay home, so that they could support our neighbors. We have delivered 63 million vaccines to Canadians so that we are now the highest in the G20 in vaccination rates. And we have to finish the job, because that is how our economy comes roaring back. We have provided 8 out of $10 of every dollar that was given to the provinces for this pandemic.
Angela,
Canadians know that we've had their backs, and they also know that it's not finished yet, and that we need to make sure that our economy comes roaring back by investing in people, by investing in Canadians and businesses, keeping the doors open. 5 million people have jobs today because of the wage subsidy. 8 million were supported through the CERB. And these are the kinds of programs now with our recovery hiring program. Now we can actually start bringing people back and making sure that we don't have the kind of scarring that other countries have had because of the pandemic, while keeping Canadians healthy.
So Anita, the aspect and the question in this case was how do we control, or how do we get a grip on the actual finances that you guys have spent over the last year and a half? I get it. We're supposed to actually, for the first 4 or 5 months, but if you look at states like Florida and Texas, it's not the zombie apocalypse. Everybody lived through it. Yes, their numbers were per capita where they were, but at the end of the day, the economic aspect of things, that the toll that it took not only on the people of this country, but the people that are still taking its toll with them being on CERB, is actually far more insurmountable than the actual cause itself. So from my aspect, what we would do as a People's Party is we would abolish CERB to begin with. First of all, get people back to work, because there's people that McDonald's, every other small business is looking to hire people, and they can't hire people right now because you've got them all on CERB.
And
another
actually,
thing
Standard
too
&
is
Poor's and Moody's
the
have
Liberals like to
reaffirmed-
disguise the debt as being a CERB problem, that it all happened because of CERB. But you know what? The Liberals were spending their way to infinity before CERB occurred, and this is just, adding thousands of millions of dollars onto our debt on top of what they already built.
We went into
I agree
this-
with the spending previous to this point, but I agree with David Yao, like the time is to stop. Small business can't even find employees right now because some people just are coasting on the CERB
So
benefits.
we went into this pandemic with the strongest
okay,
fiscal
very
position
quickly.
in the G20, and we have also know that the way in which we're going to build the economy is through things like childcare, through things like
Okay.
investing in people. Standard & Poor's and Moody's have reaffirmed our AAA rating. Why?
right.
Because we're
I want to
investing
give
in
other
Canadians,
people
and we have
a
the
chance.
best fiscal. Okay.
I want to give other people a chance to jump in here. Go ahead.
So I want to reframe the question here. It's not that our goal here is to come to some point of equilibrium. Like before the pandemic, we actually had equality. What we're looking for, what the NDP is looking for, is we're actually looking at investment in people. And we have a strategy to make that possible. We want to tax the ultra rich, the billionaires. During the pandemic, there was $78 billion of profit that billionaires earned. 44 individuals in that billionaire category, large companies like Amazon, which are just taking money out of the economy. So the NDP actually has a strategy to invest in people, but simultaneously to make each person pay their fair share. So these things that the other parties are criticizing, a livable income and guaranteed income, this is what the NDP wants. We want to build that into the new normal, not the pre-pandemic normal. We want to create substantive equality, not this fake window dressing equality that the Liberals want to return to.
Okay. Jennifer
Small,
Jennekens, go
small
ahead.
businesses are struggling, even here in a government town such as Ottawa. The Conservatives will wind down the CERB support in a responsible way and help our small businesses. We'll rebuild Main Street by offering small businesses a tax credit and a small business tax loan. It's important that we support our small businesses because really they are the mums and pops team of our country. Thank you.
There's a lot of people out there right now. I went to an actual protest today at the Civic Center, the Civic Hospital, with the first responders, with the doctors and the nurses and the long-term care people. And I spoke to them all today, all afternoon, this afternoon, before I actually got to this debate. And they are not happy. They are not happy with the fact that they cannot go to work without being mandated with a vaccine. They're not happy with the fact that their kids can't get work because they're sitting on CERB. And the People's Party of Canada, we will change that on the 20th of September.
The best way that we're going
Very
to be able
quickly.
to get out of this is by getting vaccinated and investing in Canadians, and that's
Okay.
exactly what we're doing.
Sean Mulligan, I asked you the question. You get
Yes.
the final 30 seconds on
Okay.
this. Go ahead.
The People's Party is not the only party who's against lockdowns and mandated vaccines, and so are we, the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. Let me make that perfectly clear to the people of Ottawa West-Nepean. Okay, a mandate by our Prime Minister 2 days before calling the election, mandating all federal government employees being vaccinated. This is not an act of Parliament. This is a dictatorship. What we're seeing right now is this health issue last year is now becoming a political issue.
Okay. Agreed. Thank you. Let's turn to our next question, which I'll address to David Stibbe of the Green Party. Where does your party stand on mandatory vaccines, and what steps would you take to make sure more Canadians get vaccinated? Also, for the federal public servants in your riding, what would happen to those who choose not to be vaccinated?
The Green Party is absolutely a science-based, evidence-based party. We believe, in fact, that we should actually have a chief science officer in the government who can pass all, be able to influence decisions that are made at that level in terms of vaccine passports, which which industries required full vaccinations to occur. So, and my personal opinion is that everybody needs to be vaccinated to move forward. Without vaccinating at least 90% of our population, we're going to be in a perpetual cycle where those who have been vaccinated are essentially going through the cycle and having to make sacrifices in terms of kids in schools, being able to work face-to-face with their fellow employees again.
It's open to everyone now on this topic. Go ahead.
Our government knows that the best way to a full recovery is by getting everyone vaccinated. And we have seen that Canadians are stepping up. We now have the highest vaccination rates in the G20, but we need to do more. Federal public servants deserve a safe workspace. I know many people who have said to me that if they're in a cubicle and they know that the person beside them is not vaccinated and they have children under 12, then they don't have the safety to be able to go back to work. So yes, we are asking all federal public servants to be vaccinated. Anyone who's traveling on a train, travelers have to be vaccinated. We're giving $1 billion to the provinces for vaccine passports because we know that this is the way that we will get into a full recovery, is by making sure everybody gets vaccinated and that we then are able to rebound fully.
Anita, I have to disagree with you on that because the People's Party of Canada are absolutely against mandatory vaccines. We're absolutely against these lockdowns. We're absolutely against the vaccine passports, and I'll tell you why. At the end of the day, it is 2021, and this is, your body. You should have the right to be able to put whatever you want into your body. When you're talking about an emergency measures situation where they have created these vaccines and just starting to pass FDA approval right now, at the end of the day, this is not a good situation for you to be just handing out millions and millions of vaccines for a 98 or 99% situation where you can recover from it. Don't get me wrong, I get it as far as the aspect of the 2%. But in the end of the day, this is a situation where the People's Party of Canada does not believe in mandated vaccines. We believe that it's choice. The People's Party of Canada is about choice. If you choose to put that into your body, then that's your choice. If you get sick, go to the hospital, we will take care of you. At the end of the day, it's about choice.
So I'm going to completely disagree with the People's Party on this. We believe, the NDP believes in the science. We also believe in a human rights approach. So a lot of people as a lawyer come to me and they talk about mandatory vaccination. How do we deal with this? Are my human rights violated? Are my civil rights violated? Well, human rights mechanisms have a way to deal with this. It's called the duty to accommodate. It's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There are limits, but on an evidence-based basis, people need the vaccine. But what we saw during the pandemic and what the NDP stands for is who's getting left behind. Where those vaccine passports are being implemented, can everyone have the technology to be able to show those? People who are low income, who are unhoused, what of those interests? The NDP fights for the disenfranchised and marginalized people to not only think about the science, think about health, but think about the marginalized and how they can best protect Canadians.
But see, the aspect of actual mandatory vaccines is a very, very thin line, and I'll tell you why. When you mandate something without debate, that's an issue, all right? When you're mandating aspects of people's lives across the entire nation without debate, that's an issue. Now, once you mandate passports, now you're pushing that actual execution of that policy down to a $15, $20 an hour earner that is on the front lines in restaurants, gyms, or now they're talking about cineplexes. And the problem with that is that now they're going to be feeling the brunt of somebody not being able to get into a show because you've mandated vaccine passports.
This is an article. Sorry, Dave. This is an article I read today from the League of Power. Why don't they just admit that the shots are a failure? September 1st, all these increases of people who are catching COVID, getting hospitalized for COVID, and dying from COVID are among the fully vaccinated. The Delta strain, if a vaccinated person catches COVID, they're about 5 times more likely to die from it than an unvaccinated person. The people in charge need to stop blaming the unvaccinated every time a vaccinated person catches COVID. These shots are not working. And you're right, David, 99.5% of survival rate among people under the age of 80. Thank God I'm under the age of 80.
Vaccines are the most important tool in the fight against COVID. I encourage every Canadian who is able to get a vaccine to get it. I am fully vaccinated. I have elderly parents and a disabled son who I haven't seen in a year and a half. It's important that all Canadians get vaccinated. Thank you.
We need vaccination, but as the NDP says, that substantive equality for everyone, we need to think about how that's implemented, and we need to be mindful of the rights of people who might not always have the ability to show vaccine passports, and we need to think about the best methods of implementation.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The People's Party of Canada, we are not anti-vax. We are definitely not anti-vax.
So
we are actually pro-vax, as a matter of fact, but it's pro-choice as well.
When people choose not to get vaccinated, they're not just making the choice for themselves. They're making the choice for all children under 12. They're making the choice for people who aren't able to get the vaccine. And so we want to make sure, and as far as making sure that it's accessible,
gotcha.
we have,
That's
of
time.
course, there can be paper,
Thank
other
you.
forms. Thank you.
David Stibbe, I asked you the question. We'll go back to you for 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the platforms where I can fully agree with Anita and Yavar that vaccination and science are something that we must all agree on. It's for the greater good. We can't make some people have exceptions where you're putting generally children at risk and the elderly at risk in our society. So 100% vaccination rate should be our goal. We should enable that possibility for everybody, including the underprivileged and those that don't have access to information, but we have to follow the science.
All right. Thank you. Let's turn to our next question for Anita Vandenbelt, the Liberal candidate. Your party was elected to government 6 years ago with lots of hope and optimism, but during the course of the last 6 years, there have been a series of ethical scandals involving the Prime Minister. How can we make sure that that doesn't happen in the future? And given the dropping popularity of Justin Trudeau, his favorability ratings have gone down significantly. Has Justin Trudeau lost the moral authority to be Prime Minister?
Well, first of all, I don't accept the premise of the question. We know, when I go door to door and through my Friday coffee hours that I've had every week for the last 6 years, we're hearing from Canadians who know that we've had their backs. We have lifted over 1 million Canadians out of poverty. We have taken 1 million Canadians out of housing need. Our child benefit, the Canada Child Benefit alone, has lifted 400,000 children out of poverty, but at the same time, we have made sure that families have what they need, that small businesses have what they need. People understand that our government has been not just listening to Canadians, but delivering on climate change, not just coming up with a plan or a target, exceeding that target. We have made Indigenous Reconciliation the #1 partnership. We have been there for Canadians and will continue to be.
With respect to moral authority, I think that this is a really important question, and I think what the voters should be aware of is with Anita's track record itself, and this is it's public record, and I don't mean anything against Anita personally because she's a nice person, but she's been sanctioned by the Ethics Commissioner for making unauthorized robocalls.
Actually, I think we need to stick to facts here.
In the riding, if I
I would
may.
like to stick to facts here. Because when I talk about not doing smears of my opponents that are untrue, in this case, if you look at the Ethics Commissioner's result, he said that I acted in good faith and that I did not break any parliamentary rules. What we were talking about is simply that I endorsed my husband, and the Ethics Commissioner did not apply any sanctions. And this is precisely what's wrong with Parliament. What's wrong with Parliament is that we're so busy attacking others, smearing others, twisting facts to be able to make it look like people are unethical, that we're not actually talking to each other. I founded the All-Party Democracy Caucus so that we could reduce that kind of partisanship in Parliament. So
Ms. Vandenbelt
get
used
rid
her
of that
federal
kind of heckling
database
and
to create
that kind of
robocalls
politics.
for her husband's municipal election. The Ethics Commissioner found her guilty. She did get a slap on her wrist. That's it.
So we have to go back to the idea of, the question was, about your party. There's nothing absolutely wrong at all, Anita, with yourself. But as far as the party is concerned, there is no question across this entire country, as Max Bernier is going around the entire country, and he has been since last fall, he has seen and heard from the Canadian people, and there is no question that they have lost trust in this government. Absolutely not.
Let's talk about our feminist Prime Minister. In the news today, the Liberal candidate in southwestern Ontario has been accused of sexual harassment. The Liberal strategy is to ignore and let it go away, hope it goes away. Well, there you go. A Liberal candidate has been confirmed for sexual harassment. How's that for ethics?
But if let's go back to the record then. In Anita's case, and this is not, again, Anita, a personal slight against you. It's an ethics commissioner investigation. We should be concerned about the ethics of what happened. And ultimately, because your husband didn't get elected, there wasn't a breach technically. But it's a concern.
So
it's a political concern
breach.
under the rule of law. Let me finish.
Jack Layton did.
Let me finish on this
I'd like
issue.
to correct the record here, because what I did was exactly the same thing that Jack Layton did. I went out and asked people to vote for my husband, the way that he asked people to vote for Olivia Chow. Everything that I did was exactly like that. I didn't use one single penny of parliamentary funding, and the Ethics Commissioner's report, which was a politically motivated report, actually showed that he said I followed every single rule of the Board of Internal Economy and that I acted in good faith. This is the reason why politics doesn't work. You have a choice between a parliamentarian who is going to reach across and build people up, or you can tell how people are going to be parliamentarians by how they campaign.
Let's
If
talk
they
about the
campaign on
Defense
smears,
Committee. Let's
that's
talk
the
about
kind of
General
parliamentarian that they're going to
The
be.
question
And
was
we
about
want
the
a
trust
better
of the
House of
government.
Commons
One at a time, please.
with
All right.
more people who are able
Thank
to
you.
reach across the floor and
Thank
work
you.
with others.
So
No,
I would like to bring the question back as whether we
Exactly.
still believe in Justin Trudeau as
That's
a
right.
leader, because that was actually the original question. And Justin Trudeau came in with great promises, and many people turned to the Liberal parties with many big hopes. One of his big promises was proportional representation. It was a foundation of his platform, and he did not follow through on that, and that led to some great disappointment. Then he promised to really take climate change seriously, and then he fell through on that promise. He bought a pipeline. My gosh, is that taking climate change seriously? Absolutely not. And it's been a continual process. Some of the ethical issues that are out there as well have also dampened our enthusiasm for Justin Trudeau as a leader. And I think it's when you see that consistent pattern of poor behavior, broken promises, and that is what I feel going door to door. It really is anything but Justin Trudeau. It's not anything but Liberal, it's anything but Justin Trudeau. And that
Dave,
tells
I have to agree with you on this
that they
one.
have lost faith in him as a
Absolutely. There is no question, as we go out and we hammer the doors and we're hammering the Ottawa West-Nepean riding, there is no question that the people are not happy. They're not happy with this government. Even though you may sit there and say you think they are, the silent majority is going to have their say on the 20th.
So the Prime Minister back in 2015 and 2019 made many promises, according to David, on electoral reform. Okay, he pulled the plug on electoral reform on February 1st, 2017, basing his decision on no consensus. Also, he promised to help the middle-class families in Canada. 2 successful rounds of carbon taxes since January in Canada. How is that helping the middle class in Canada?
But I want to go back to issues of ethics. The sexual harassment investigation, the Defense Committee in respect of General Vance, Anita actually filibustered in that case to not permit Zita Stravis to provide evidence in that investigatory process. And I think that what we need to do as a general rule in terms of transparency is we need to allow more transparency to have a full discussion on issues of ethical compliance.
Okay. Anita Vandenbelt, you have the last 30 seconds on your own anyway, so go right ahead.
So I think we've seen here today why young people are turned off of politics. Because when you have people that put their name forward on a ballot, they're doing so because they want to make their country better. I have a record of always working across the floor. I have never torn down the people opposite. I have never torqued things to try to smear their reputations. I have always led in Parliament in being respectful and allowing for everybody to get their views across. This is the kind of thing. You can tell what kind of MP someone will be by how they campaign. If they tell you their
that's
ideas,
time.
then they'll be...
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next question. David Yeo of the People's Party of Canada. I'll address it to you. A significant number of residents of Ottawa West-Nepean, of course, are seniors. What would you do to make life more affordable for seniors in your community?
Absolutely. It's a great question, Mark. You know, the aspect of our elders and the older people in the LTCs and just, you know, generally speaking, we have a whole baby boom scenario that is playing out where they're getting older. That is a big issue for economics as well. So it actually ties in with the actual housing problem that we have. We have issues with, you know, hyperinflated housing that's going on. We have issues with hyperinflated rents going on. As I walk around and I talk to the residents of the Ottawa West-Nepean riding, this is what they're telling me. They're saying that my rent has gone up 30% in the last year and a half because someone bought the place, and next thing you know, their rent is going up. So when it comes back to our residents and our elders and our certainly, you know, our older folks that are in these these homes, I would say that we have to have a plan to move forward.
Open to
with them.
everyone now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. Who wants to go next?
Well, we have the third largest seniors population in all the ridings across Canada. Yet it seems to be an ignored issue largely by the Liberals here. We were decimated by COVID in our healthcare facilities, especially the retirement homes that go down Carling. Seniors are taught, you know, I was discussing with seniors last night the idea that, you know, even the idea that of a senior center, which has been promised by successive governments, both the Conservatives and the Liberals and previous candidates, and nothing ever seems to get done for the seniors in our riding, right? We do very little for them. And one of the things we need to do is build a seniors facility where we can bring experts into to work with seniors to discuss their issues. We need to address, you know, I'm worried about senior pensions. When we go into the massive, I'm not talking, you know, just a small amount of debt that the Liberals have built up over the years. They have built up a massive debt, unprecedented in history in Canada. We're going to have inflation like my parents experienced when they were paying 18% on their mortgages in the near future. So what is that going to do to seniors?
Let's talk about pensions. The Conservatives will create a legislation that will protect individual pensions versus corporate elite. Certainly in Ottawa West-Nepean, we've seen when Sears closed in Nortel, my brother-in-law worked for Nortel, pensions were cut by 30%. So it's important that we protect our seniors' pensions. Let's talk about gas prices. $1.38 the other day, $80 for me to fill up my car. We need to make gas more affordable for everyday Canadians. If everyone remembers the bread scandal, the Conservatives will increase the maximum fine for companies who price fix. Loblaws, a number of big food chains, had a scandal way back where they upped the price on bread. So little things like that.
So to continue on with my opening comments from the People's Party of Canada, right? The aspect of the seniors being in these residents for-profit, you know, I won't name them here, but for-profit organizations that are looking after our seniors, this is a big issue.
So first of all, Nortel happened under John Barrett, just to be clear. But second of all, when we want to talk about building seniors housing, just go down Merivale Road, the Carlington Community Health Center. This is a model for the rest of the country where we have built, with Ottawa Community Housing, seniors housing on top of all of the services and the health clinic right beneath there. That was federal and provincial funding working together in that center. And we have built housing across the entire riding. We have lifted 50,000 seniors out of poverty through our increase with the GIS, which we are going to increase again. We've made sure that CPP is secure going into the future. And we've ensured that every single senior who is facing isolation, we have doubled the New Horizons program to be able to provide funding directly to seniors. We're making life affordable through housing and through income supports. And that's something that you can actually drive down and see in bricks and mortar the difference that we've made as a Liberal government.
So I'm going to agree with the People's Party Canada on one point here, that private funding, putting private dollars into seniors' care is not working. That is what the NDP is against in terms of that fragility of that kind of support. We know under Trudeau, there were millions of dollars in subsidies that were put into private long-term care homes, making them fragile institutions. We know that 80,000 seniors in homes were infected with the COVID-19 disease between March 20 and February 2021. And so that kind of vulnerability needs a proper federal approach, a systematic approach, so we protect the most vulnerable. And that's what the NDP is about. It's providing for basic health care in the areas where it's needed most, and our seniors' care, one of the most important pillars of our community, need to be properly protected.
So I'm going to go one step further on that and say that with the People's Party of Canada, there is a definite problem with the for-profit organizations, and we'll take them to task on that. The second part of that is there isn't enough long-term care workers that are actually accessing the actual facilities themselves. And we will put a lot of dollars into hiring those people and making sure that they're taking care of our seniors.
So we're not putting a lot of dollars. We are putting $9 billion into long-term care. And we have put in national standards for long-term care. We are going to be training more PSWs and making sure they make $25 an hour. That is part of our plan to make sure, because this is exactly what the pandemic has done. It has revealed the inequities. It has laid bare the things that were just shoved under the rug. And that's why when we build back, we have to keep investing in Canadians, in people, in seniors. That is our plan. And we're not going to be cutting, and we're not going to be trying to use austerity at a time.
But the Liberals knew this already. They're making promises now, but for the last 6 years, where were they? Where were they for seniors? These are very interesting promises to be making at the time of election, but where those private dollars, as the People's Party are saying, where those private dollars were there in senior care, that's making these institutions fragile and vulnerable.
That's time. David Yeo, I asked you the question. You get the final 30 seconds on this. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. So in the case of our seniors, you have to understand the people of Ottawa West-Nepean, the people of Canada, both home and abroad. You cannot use our seniors as pawns. They are not pawns in your profit game. So when it comes to the People's Party of Canada, we will have a serious look at this when we get into government, and we will adjudicate it accordingly and make sure that our seniors are taken care of properly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, candidates. That brings us to the end of our debate. We're going to finish up with closing statements now. And again, each candidate will have 1 minute to speak directly to you, the voters of Ottawa West-Nepean. And we'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements, meaning we'll go right back to David Yeo from the People's Party of Canada. Go ahead.
That's great. Thanks again, Mark. So again, David Yeo, People's Party of Canada, candidate for Ottawa West-Nepean. Like I had mentioned, I am Indigenous. Chief Robert Franklin is my grandfather and my great-grandfather, and he signed the treaties with the colonials some 98 years ago. I have to admit that the Indigenous issues are near and dear to my heart, and there is no question that they'll be forefront when I get into Parliament. The second part of that is I'd like to thank Rogers for stepping up. Our leader, Max Bernier, did not get the opportunity, or is not going to get the opportunity, to actually debate like we are today. And I appreciate Rogers stepping up and allowing the People's Party of Canada to be able to have a voice for the people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is Anita Vandenbeld, the Liberal candidate. Go ahead.
Thank you. Since I was elected in 2015, I have seen the best in our community. We know in Ottawa West-Nepean that when our neighbors do well, we all do well. Whether it was welcoming the Syrian refugees, sandbagging alongside our neighbors to protect each other's properties from floods, dropping off groceries to vulnerable seniors during the pandemic, or getting vaccinated to protect those who can't. We've been there for each other, and your Liberal government has been there for you, as have I. And we need to keep on moving forward. We have a choice in this election between positive politics, investing in people and moving forward, or going backward and not learning the lessons of the pandemic and returning to a negative attack politics. What I have shown as your MP is that I will always stand for you. I know that we are stronger when we work together, and I'm asking you for your vote on September 20th so that I can keep doing exactly that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is the Green Party candidate, David Stibbe. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Hi, my name's David Stibbe. I'm representing the Green Party in our riding, and I have been a teacher for nearly 25 years in various capacities, listening to students, and it's a direct insight into the concerns and worries about families. And I can tell you that, the number one worry of Canadians, especially young people, is the future and climate change. And the Green Party really is the only party that really wants to make that a priority. And it's very obvious, even in these discussions, that there are other concerns, but that is something that is going to continue to influence us and is going to become more of a concern as we move forward. As well, I'm an entrepreneur. I started a small business in our own riding, a small tourism business. And I can tell you that the Liberals really abandoned small business. Small business generates 70% of jobs in Canada, yet the tourism industry, small restaurants, small stores were abandoned in favor of big box stores. And that is really the Liberal legacy here during COVID. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Sean Mulligan from the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, Election Day is decision day. This election campaign is a war between the culture of death and the culture of life. Representing the culture of death are the Liberals, also known as the Communists, and the NDP, also known as the Socialists. Representing the culture of life is the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. CHP leader Rod Taylor says a vote for life is never wasted. In fact, a vote for the Christian Heritage Party is a vote for the sanctity of life. Here's another reason for not voting for the Liberals. Canadian citizens Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are prisoners in China. China is Justin Trudeau's favorite nation. We at CHP Canada continue to pray for the release of these two Michaels. St. Catherine of Siena's motto was, "Speak truth to power." To all the Catholics and Christians living in Ottawa West-Nepean, do not give Justin Trudeau absolute power, otherwise he will destroy Canada. Vote with your conscience, vote for the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, speak truth to power.
All right, thank you. Next is the Conservative Party candidate, Jennifer Jennekens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to my fellow candidates, and thank you for tuning in this evening. We talked about many important issues, but I'd like to take this last opportunity to speak directly to you, a Canadian who's given up on your dream of ever owning your own home, a senior who's worked hard your entire life and who wishes to remain independent, a person living with a disability who would like to lead a productive and meaningful life, like my son Matthew. I hear you and I see you, and I'm running to serve you. Like many of you, I live paycheck to paycheck. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and I drive a 12-year-old car. On September the 20th, I invite you to vote for me, Jennifer Jennekens, because I've walked in your shoes, and I'm running to serve you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the closing statement from Yavar Hameed of the New Democratic Party. Go ahead.
This election is full of a lot of confusing promises by candidates pledging different things to make your life in Ottawa West-Nepean better. So basically, how do you decide? I want to leave you with 3 things to consider. First of all, the NDP is the party that's been fighting for worker rights, income security, and human rights for over 60 years. This is the party of Tommy Douglas, universal health care, and it's what we've always done. Secondly, the last 6 years have shown that the Liberals have amassed a horrendous record of failing to deliver, broken promises, and scandals. There is no evidence that their track record will change. So where do we go? Jagmeet Singh and the NDP believe that each person should pay their fair share, polluters should be held accountable, and that human rights protection is demonstrated through action, not just words. On September 20th, fight for something better and vote for the NDP.
Thank you to all of you. Good luck to you in the rest of the campaign. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And this concludes our debate for Ottawa West-Nepean. Thank you for watching.